So what I would like to talk about is actually measuring. So measuring has been one of the most important aspects of sports training. And we have quite some apps in the market. We have quite some wearables in the market. And we had some kind of standing up recently. I would like to ask, and I hope my slides will not pass quickly. So, how many of you have a sports tracking app in their phones? Can you please raise your hands? Something, doesn't matter, can be cycling, can be running, can be rowing, simply number of steps, that's fine. I see quite a lot of hands raised. And I would like to ask a second question, but this time I would like you to stand up. How many of you are wearing a smartwatch? Can also be a ring, for example, somehow a wearable. Yannick, you're not wearing? No, not today. Well, look around you, please. Look around you and how different we can be. Please now take a seat. Yeah, so we have quite some different type of users in when we talk about the wearables, when we'll talk about the apps. We have quite some different types of people who are using these apps and wearables. And now, why am I here today? Actually, what I would like to talk about today is the numbers. The numbers that we see every day, the numbers that we get from our wearables, from our apps every day about ourselves. Something. It can be a number of steps. I'm taking a number of steps now, 3,000 steps for today, not so much, but we have been sitting and not maybe walking that much. But I'm not going to talk about the start numbers, but I'm going to talk about, as I said, the numbers that we receive from wearables. Let's look back. What happened is that with the kind of the stimulation of the technology, with the technology improvements in technology, what we have witnessed and we are witnessing is the number of actually the apps and the sport tracking wearables that are number of these are increasing. In 2022, actually, it was around 41,000 apps only in the App Store that somehow an app is introduced that measures some sort of a physical activity or some sort of an health-related aspects. And what happens with the same kind of numbers that we see is that also the wearables market is increasing, growing. Well, I have some statistics here, and in around 6 years, the global market is estimated to be around $55 billion all around the world, which means that the number of these sports trackers will also increase. It's not going to be different for the apps as well. They're quite the market, the revenue will grow with the same speed and even probably kind of accelerated. Which is nice. We have quite some technology, we have differences, we have also different people who are using these apps and wearables. We might somehow find our own ways to find the best fit to us, right? So any apps that you use for sports tracking can be used by many people, but also you're looking for something that clicks with you. What I'm interested in is that the number of the people who use these apps, who use these wearables, which means that with the growth of the technology, the numbers, there are billions of users and millions of data points that are being collected by the technology that is presented to the users. As I said, I have a product design background. I am very much interested in the human-centered aspects of using technology for sports and physical activity. And what I look into is that actually who uses the technology. As we have seen also, there are quite different types of users. There can be elite athletes who uses these technologies. Simple wearables can give a lot of information about the physiology of the athletes. These can be like Silke Jonkman, who was also a student of the University of Twente once in a while. But also, we have also seen that like we are citizens can also be the users of this technology, which can be senior people, let's call them, but also like anyone that is willing to be physically active, or anyone who is interested in seeing these numbers can be the users of the technology. So yes, we have the wearables, we have different types of users, but also what's happening in the field is also of my interest, that what I have been looking into. So yes, we can use the technology to motivate people to be physically active. On the other side of the spectrum, we can use the technology to do research about people and to understand how they are using the technology. What happened in the past years is that with the proliferation of the smart wearables, we can now kind of understand our health and well-being, fitness levels, etc. In the meantime, it's also kind of expanding, the research is expanding the way that we use the wearables. Recently, we have motion capturing, like full body suit, that can measure all the physiological aspects of being active. Can also be like goggles, which are not there yet, let's say, but also very simple lifestyle wearables that can be used in monitoring physical activity. These are quite nice developments, and many people are actually very much kind of motivated to use these technologies because they are new. When the first Fitbits were introduced, many people started using them, not because they thought that it's useful for them, but it was a really good opportunity to understand how many steps they take every day. In my research, what I also try to understand is that what happens historically and how actually these historical developments can also help us project what's going to happen in the future. So, well, it started all with kind of pedometers, the number of steps that we can quantify. And then over time, now with the heart rate monitors and all the accelerometers, the temperature measurements and everything, we can get a lot of data from the wearables. I'm going to give a few examples, which will also help me to kind of explain my story better. In 2010s, when I was doing my PhD studies, this device was in the market, and it's not anymore. It's called Body Media, and it was one of the first. It was before Fitbit, where like these small pedometers were introduced to the market. And I did my PhD study with these devices. What I did is that I gave away these Body Media wearables to a few participants, and then I asked them to keep track of their physical activity. And I wasn't interested in whether or not these people are active or not. I was interested in whether or not these wearables are accepted and whether or not the numbers they see in the dashboard of the system were understandable for them. So what happened is that after 5 weeks, I collected their feedback, and many people said they don't want to use this device anymore. For them, it was useful because it gives a lot of information about their physical activity, temperature, the calories burned, etc., etc. And what was happening is that this blue kind of button helps people to transfer their data to the system, and then they were able to get this dashboard from them. So the reason why they said they don't want to use this device was that it really looks like a medical device for them. Because many people said it's worn in an like upper arm, and it gives the other world, the other people, that they are actually sick. And after kind of 5 years, this device was not produced anymore. One of the reasons was actually Fitbits, the introduction of the Fitbit. So why I'm telling you this story is that yes, we can do a lot with wearables, but the way the wearables are designed also affects whether or not they will be useful for people. I will move towards sports. Also in 2010s, Nike introduced one of the first GPS tracking sports wearable. And I was one of the users because I was really into understanding what kind of information it gives. It was quite nice. It was useful. It was giving the kilometers that you take when you're running. It was connecting to the GPS, not super great technology. But what was interesting is that this small reddish food pod Nike introduced, and then it kind of forced people to buy different types of shoes, because what they were offering is that this food pod goes into your shoe, and there's kind of a small hole in the shoe, like Nike Nike sports shoe, and then what it was doing is only taking collecting the number of steps. So instead of having a different wearable like now we are using, Nike was using the data that it collects with this food pod, merges it with the GPS, and then kind of giving the perfect numbers that we need to understand how long we are running and kind of how many steps we take while running. Technically, it is the cadence today that we use in the that we see in the sports apps. Well, the technology became more and more advanced, and currently we have quite some different types of activity trackers, wearables that these recreational athletes can use. I'm sure you know Garmin. It's one of the most used smart wearable, sports wearable in the market. There's also different types of metrics that you can get, like Stride, for example, is one of the kind of pod kind of device that runners can put on their shoes. It gives the power calculations. It's going to probably grow more because we have seen the numbers. And since people become more and more interested in tracking their metrics, we will see different types of variables for sure. Let's now move to the user side. So how do people use the technology in their sports tracking? So the body media was a kind of a different example. So it was not used for sports tracking, but because now we can use a lot of kind of connected technology, GPS tracking, heart rate monitoring, everything is now minimized, and now we can track everything with our watches. I'm particularly interested in running, and that's why my story will steer towards running, but the things that I'm going to talk about can be applied to many more sports. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about Dutch stories. In 2022, we have seen this news item in NOS. And then what it was saying is that last year, before 2022, there were around 2.5 million athletes, and I'm sure these athletes also cover recreational athletes, in the Netherlands only suffered from an injury. And then there are a lot of results, 50 million days. What was actually striking for me is that, well, many athletes overestimate themselves. And for example, there is a risk of overloading. So for the sports science people, I think loading and overloading is a clear term. But for me, who is outside the sports science, it was like, what does overloading mean? I'll come back to that. And we have seen the number of the technology variables, all the numbers that we are taking are increasing. And you know what happened last year? We have seen a similar news item. Last year, it was like a month ago actually. In December, we have seen another NOS article, which was showing that around 400,000 Dutch people were not able to do any sports anymore. And the term came back, this overloading. Especially runners were injured because they are also overestimating what they can do, but they are mostly these injuries occur due to overloading. And I was interested in this load and overload and what we can do with this. Very briefly, I'm going to talk about loading, and then I'm going to speak about how the technology is being used for this load management. Well, the use of personal data in training load management for sports scientists is very clear. Well, there's this curve that they use. Please correct me if I'm mistaken. And there is a very nice sweet spot within this curve, which means that when you're training for an event or even just for fun, you need to still be within this region. And if you go further than that, too quickly, too fast, too frequently, then it can result in the risk of injury. That's how kind of also the NOS articles were referring to, because it actually increases the risk of injury if everything happens very quickly. Let's look at the technology side. What happens in the technology side? This is a Garmin Sportswatch interface. I'm very much interested in how the data is presented to the sporters. What we see here is that the Garmin warns the user, saying actually this user has an anaerobic shortage, and with a kind of also shortening, anair shortage, which shows that for one of the aspects of this training load, this user is having less training, but in the other one, this person is overreaching, so overdoing. And also what happens in the Garmin's app interface is that because they are also coupled, it gives a bit more information. Well, this says, well, the training load is sufficient, very nice, but this person is again in anaerobic shortage. Doesn't say much what this person should be doing. Only to see improvement, try working out longer or more often. Okay, this person was already overreaching in one of the training load related measures. What I was also interested in is these numbers. So it says VO2 max is something, load is 913, it's optimal, and heat acclimation is 75%. For a person who is not in sports science, who is not understanding any of these measures, what does VO2 max mean for this person? Or what does load mean for this person? Well, VO2 max, max, very nice. It sounds nice, right? Maximum and 54. Oh, it's really nice. But out of 100, is it out of 100, 54? It's like mediocre. Well, people generally look into these numbers and then do what? And then another thing is, let's move back to the app interface. This is Strava interface. And what Strava says, by the way, I think this is kind of the similar range of, this is all my data, by the way, a similar range. And then it says, well, it's a steady progress, 257. Where does it come from? I don't know. And then there's some sort of another numbers and some dots on the interface. Okay, what shall I understand from these numbers? If I am, as a scientist who is trying to understand what these mean for myself, if I cannot make sense of it, how would a general Like a normal citizen would make sense of these numbers. Well, actually, I was more interested in this line, and then I said, okay, let's see what people do with this data. And then over the past almost 10 years now, we looked into different types of runners, different types of users, how they use wearable technology in their running practice. We asked quite a lot of questions, like what these metrics mean, like VO2 max mean, effort mean, load mean. And also, how do they use these data metrics in their running? As I said, over the 10 years, we did quite a lot of participant studies, and recently, in 2024, the last article was published. We particularly looked into how runners use training load-related data in their practices. And some of the results will also resonate with NOS articles we're saying. Yes. So what we found was a lot of people in their initial experiences, when they start running, they download an app, and then they rely quite a lot on the metrics. I do this number of steps, or I run this pace, I run this kilometers. Perfect. And then what happens? And then they start thinking about the next run. On the other hand, they are not really interested in listening to their bodies. So they're like, okay, this is perfect. Next time I'm going to run my personal best 5K or 10K. Does this work like that? Sports scientists says probably no. And then when people get a bit more expert in their running experience, they start to listen to their bodies a bit more. But then there is kind of a gap between being novice to expert in physical activity. And we also looked into, okay, what do these people experience, and why do they use the sport technology if they're not going to, if they're going to just, keep being active? Some people were saying they're just using it for out of curiosity. It gives them a challenge. When you go for a run or go for for cycling, if you see that, oh, my pace was this, or I did this number of kilometers, next time, well, it's good to know. And then the next time, try to beat your personal best. But again, is this what we ask for? It was also interesting to see that some people start to think about hitting the numbers. This was very interesting participant from the article from 2021. One of the participants was quite young, by the way. I think he was around 24, and he was really fast. And he was saying that when he was running, he was constantly checking his watch to see whether or not he is really hitting the numbers. Is this also something that we want, that just make people constantly obsessed with the numbers that the variables are showing them? And finally, I'm going to connect it to this, again, the seniors. Many people use it for runs just for fun, and they are not that much interested in seeing or hitting the numbers. They just want to have fun out of these activities. And then one of the recent studies that we had, one of the participants was 70 years old, and then she was saying that her VO2 max is constantly decreasing, and she's not very happy about it. And then she was like, it shows me that I'm getting old, and I cannot get faster, and it makes me really sad. And I also felt sad about it, because we want people to have fun and be active, and then why do we make people be obsessed about these numbers? So these the stories also tie together, because, as I said in one of the slides, that what we found was that people have two different types of training load management practices, which develops with the variables use. On the one side, it's very nice because we kind of help people to know better about their bodies, understand it, try to kind of feel what the numbers say. And the second is they become a bit more self-directed. And all these actually relate to why people use the sport trackers, whether or not they use it for determining their training loads or the next practices, and the role of technology in their training load measurement. I'm not going to go into details, but then in the paper that we published last year, we gave quite some detailed insights about how these occur. In the guided training load management, when people use the sport tracker for guiding themselves, they develop some sort of a competency with different sources. They start, okay, this is what the technology says, but also they start to compare their bodily signals to what the data tells them, which is quite nice actually, because a lot of people were also saying, I don't need to check my watch anymore after a while, because it becomes kind of a learning moment. I can understand what my heart rate is. I can sense what my heart rate is at a certain pace. And the second one was the self-directed, when people start feeling the body, feeling the data, they become actually, they start to decide their own training plans, which was also for us interesting to know. And they become a bit more attuned to, a bit more reliant on their bodies. For example, another example that we had was recovery time, for example. When people go for a run or sport activity, the smartwatches kind of accumulate data and then shows a recovery time. And then sometimes it's like 24 hours. Yeah, you need to rest a day, but then sometimes it's 5 days. And some people were saying, I cannot rest 5 days because I don't want to do that. And I feel that I'm not that tired, so I'm going to go for a run next day. So these kind of decisions are actually taken by the runners themselves. But we also found that this informed trust in the technology is very important. So many people, many sporters were trusting. What we found was that many people were trusting their technology in calculating calculating the training load, which was quite nice. Like you can understand that the technology is becoming advanced and they are kind of coupling their senses with what technology says. But then they were not really willing to follow the recommendations that are coming from the technology. It was mainly why the technology is not maybe that accurate for them. And it was also quite good to see that people still rely on humans, human coaches and themselves more than the technology. But on the other hand, the technology can also say that, you should stop. You should not go, you should not force yourself. And despite these, many people were just ignoring what the technology tells them. There is kind of a debate about that as well. Should we really rely on technology with everything? Or should we just listen to our bodies as well? So in that sense, I think the answer is going to be not simple. What we are currently doing is we are trying to understand what the data tells to people, or what data tells to people and what people understand from it. When we look from this building informed trust, it's not just the accuracy of the data. It's not just what the people are presented. It's more like what people get out of this, what people make sense of it. And what we are seeing is that many numbers are not useful for many people, but some of the things that can be very useful are also ignored. And that's why we need to kind of foster this sense making of running related or sports related data in a better way. And this way we think that focusing on this data sense making, data understanding, increasing maybe the data literacy can be one of the ways that we can use the technology better. And this way we can help people to increase or decrease their training load, and then we can help people to observe the impacts of their training better. And finally, some measurement errors can be maybe better explained. Looking back, what I can say is that the technology is not there yet, or at least the data presented to people is not maybe that understandable yet to help people to overcome these injuries. So I think we still have a lot to do there. Yes, the technology can be an answer, but not the full answer yet. What I also want to emphasize is that it's not only explainability, because in the one of the first slides I showed, yeah, okay, what is load can be explained by the interfaces. For example, here as well, stress levels, for example. It's also very interesting and important for sporters. And it shows again some numbers, high, medium, low, rest. But again, if it's not really understandable for people, if it doesn't make sense what these numbers mean, it's not going to be useful at all. One thing that we try to emphasize also when we are teaching this kind of work to our students is that we should maybe focus less in performative aspects, because the technology is always pushing the numbers and the metrics in a way that, oh, your performance was increasing or decreasing, and then it makes people really feel disappointed of themselves at some point. And then we also need to think about these digital and medical reading skills, like literacies. The terminology that we use in the interfaces are not always clickable for people. They don't click, they don't understand, and then they start ignoring. So then, where are we going to start? Okay, well, we have many users who are interested in using technology. We have a lot of technology developers who are interested in developing technologies. And then, should we have this type of interfaces in our phones, having multiple apps for multiple sports, for multiple purposes, which have also multiple data points and everything? It's like exploding. Or this one, people also can think about, okay, this device is not accurate, and that's why I need more data points to make my performance more accurately measured. Well, my simple answer is actually no. What I would like to emphasize is that we should not, well, I see we as the researchers, designers who are working on this field, we should not start developing an app for everything, because we have a lot of apps, we have a lot of, as I said, data points, but then sometimes an app is not the solution, or a wearable device might not be the solution. We need to go back to the users, we need to go back to the people who are using these devices, and then search for the practices. It's not only using the wearable for tracking. And I think there's quite a lot of work to do for us. As I said, I'm coming from the design department, but we obviously need sports scientists, and I think we need to just come together. One of the conclusions can be that. But I have also some takeaway messages for today. I have heard that there's someone from Zonenway in the audience. I think the governmental organizations, when we are searching for funding, we really need to not look only on developing the technology, but also going back to the users of the technology and understand how all the interfaces, data points are made sense by people. So then I think it's one of the most important things is that, yes, data is a solution, but how the data is used is not yet known very well. For the researchers, we have also quite some researchers in the audience. I think we need to develop better frameworks, not only understanding how to make people physically active or do sports, but also how to embed these subjective experiences, how they feel, a bit better into the technologies that we are designing. I also would like to open up another line for the students who are in the audience. I think it's not only, again, about developing a technology if the technology does not hit the right person. So then it's also not only about searching for the needs, but combining them in a kind of a useful, a bit more human-centered way of developing. And finally, I think maybe there's some runners in the audience or any sporters. Data is not always the answer, because what we have seen in our participant studies is that, as I said, hitting the numbers can be really hard. And you might be injured. You don't want to be injured. You might be recovering. Your performance might be going bad, or going bad, or increasing. But on the other hand, probably sports sciences says the same. We just need to also learn to listen to our bodies. And maybe couple the data that we receive from the technology with our bodies. I think we have quite a lot of missed opportunities, and I would like to invite everyone to get connected and to explore this unsolved challenges of sports and technology field together. Thank you so much. I'm right on time.
Yeah, right.